The face of Elrond was ageless, neither old nor young, though in it was written the memory of many things, both glad and sorrowful. His hair was dark as the shadows of twilight, and upon it was set a circlet of silver. His eyes were gray, as clear as evening, and in them was the light like the light of the stars. Venerable he seemed, as a king crowned with many winters, and yet hale as a tried warrior in the fullness of his strength. He was the Lord of Rivendell, and mighty among both elves and men. When you think of Elrond, you probably think of a mysterious and overprotective father, but you probably don't think of one of the most tragic lives in Middle-earth. Elrond's life is riddled with tragedy at every turn. From an orphan to the leader of the last homely house and a sacrificial father, Elrond's story is one of Middle-earth's most complex tales. Hello friends, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Seth, and I'm excited to share with you some well-earned comforts. Before we begin our discussion today, I ask that you like, comment, and subscribe. It'll really help as we grow this channel. Also, don't forget to check out our podcast. Just search Well-Earned Comforts wherever you listen. As we dive into the works of Tolkien, there's no telling where we'll be swept off to. As we begin our discussion today, we need to set the stage by delving into Elrond's remarkable lineage. It is this lineage that sets him apart as a truly extraordinary being. Elrond possesses a rare combination of elven, human, and even Maya heritage. His birth took place in the year 532 of the First Age as the son of Eärendil and Elwing. Among his paternal ancestry, Elrond's grandparents include Tuor from the House of Hador and Idril Celebrian from the Hidden City of Gondolin. On his maternal side, his great-grandparents are the renowned Beren and Luthien, whose legendary tales echo through the ages. Now I know that's a lot to picture, but it is important to realize just how deep his lineage goes. As we transition into his childhood, Elrond and his brother Elros became orphans at the young age of 6. Elrond's parents inherited the Silmaril that was passed down from Beren and Luthien, and when the sons of Feanor were made aware of this, that knowledge drove them to attempt to fulfill their father's terrible oath. This led to the third kinslaying of elf against elf. Prior to their attack, Eärendil had decided to set sail for Valinor with the hopes of gaining the aid of the Valar in their war against Morgoth. So when the sons of Feanor attacked, Elwing, who had been left behind, decided to cast herself and the treasured jewel into the sea, rather than being captured or killed. When she did this, the Vala Ulmo took pity on her and bore her out of the sea in the form of a white bird and transported her to Vingulot, the ship of Eärendil. The rejoined couple then continued to Valinor and begged the help of the Valar in the war against Morgoth. The Valar agreed to Eärendil's plea, and thus the War of Wrath began. And flying alongside Thorondor, the Lord of Eagles, Eärendil delivered the death blow to Encalagon the Black, the largest dragon to ever exist. After the War of Wrath, Elrond's parents were not permitted to leave the Blessed Realm. Therefore, they remained in Valinor, and Eärendil was accounted as one of the firstborn. This meant that back in Middle-earth, the two brothers, Elrond and Elros, were now orphans, and they were adopted by Maglor, one of the two remaining sons of Feanor who reluctantly took part in the kinslaying. So the two brothers were adopted by one of their family's aggressors, and a close bond ended up being formed. However, this didn't last long, as 55 years later, the sons of Feanor again pursued their oath to their deaths. It is at this point that Elrond and Elros were granted a choice by the Valar, to remain elves after the lineage of their mother, or to take upon themselves the gift of men after their father. Elros decided to set sail into the west, guided by the star of Eärendil, and he became the first king of the line of Númenor, thus taking on the gift of men. However, Elrond chose to be of the firstborn and remain immortal. So by the age of 58, Elrond lost both of his parents, his foster father, and his brother. He was also one of the elves who decided to remain in Middle-earth and not hearken to the desires of the Valar, calling their elves to return to Valinor. And over the next 1700 years, Elrond developed a close friendship with the High King of the Elves, Gil-galad, who became another foster father in Elrond's life. It was during this time that he was sent to Eregion as the lieutenant of Gil-galad. Unfortunately, Eregion ended up falling to Sauron's forces just a couple years later, and Elrond was forced to retreat. This is when he decided decided to establish the refuge of Rivendell. As Elrond became the Lord of Rivendell, he continued to fight in the wars against Sauron. During these battles, he acquitted himself well and became known for his prowess in battle, his gifts in healing, and his foresight. This trust led Gil-galad to give Vilya, the Ring of Air, to Elrond prior to their departure to fight in the Last Alliance. As the Second Age and the war against Sauron came to a close, Elrond fought alongside Gil-galad and Elendil during the Battle of the Dol-gulad. It can be assumed that he watched as his High King and Elendil were struck down in combat against Sauron, and that he was present when Isildur cut the One Ring from Sauron's hand. And with Sauron temporarily defeated, so too ended the Second Age, an age in which Elrond lost yet another father figure in Gil-galad. Therefore, prior to the time of the Lord of the Rings, Elrond has already lost his two parents, his brother, and two foster fathers. As the Third Age began, Elrond was one of the last remaining High Elves in Middle-earth, and he was considered one of the wisest elves alongside Círdan, Galadriel, and Celeborn. As we move forward with Elrond's life in the Third Age, it is important to remember that Tolkien states that elves never married if they sensed a time of upcoming battle and strife. Thus, in the year 109 of the Third Age, Elrond assumes there will be a time of peace, and he decides to marry the daughter of Galadriel and Celeborn, and her name was Celebrian. And shortly after their marriage, the twin sons Elladan and Elrohir were born, and 11 years later, Arwen and Damiel. For Elrond, who has experienced so much grief and loss during the first two ages of the world, he finally has a beautiful start to the Third Age, which is full of hope and promise. And though Rivendell is left in peace for the next 2,500 years, the men of Gondor faced many challenges. In the year 1976, the Dunedain of Arnor went into hiding, and around 75 years later, the line of kings in Gondor began to fall, and the rule of the stewards began. This resulted in a tradition in which the heirs of the Dunedain were raised in Rivendell by Elrond, and in Elrond's keeping were also the Shards of Narsil and the Scepter of Annúminas. During this time, which was termed the Watchful Peace, Elrond turned Rivendell into a beacon of hope and a center for gaining wisdom and providing rest and healing for those in need of solace. Elrond's vast knowledge, compassion, and leadership turned Rivendell into the last homely house for the free peoples of Middle-earth. However, as the threat of Sauron continued to grow, the White Council was formed in the year 2463, in which Elrond took part. Prior to this, in the year 2509, tragedy once again strikes the House of Elrond. Celebrian, the wife of Elrond, headed east over the Misty Mountains to visit her parents Galadriel and Celeborn in Lothlorien. As she was crossing over the Red Horn Pass, the very same that the Fellowship attempted in the Quest of the Ring, she was waylaid by orcs and taken captive. For a year, Celebrian was tortured by the orcs, and she received a poisoned wound. Though she was rescued by her sons Elladan and Elrohir, and she was healed in body by Elrond, Celebrian would be unable to forget her torments during her time in the dungeons of the orcs. Regardless of the healing powers of Elrond, he was unable to cure his wife's ailments, and because of this, she grew weary of Middle-earth and sought healing in the uttermost west. She left her family behind and set sail for Valinor. For the next few hundred years, Elrond helped care for the free peoples of Middle-earth by providing counsel, aid, and healing. And in the year 2931, Aragorn Elessar was born, and he was sent to live under the tutelage of Elrond in Rivendell. Elrond decided to hide Aragorn's true lineage from him until his coming of age, but when Aragorn was just 20 years old, Elrond revealed to him his true nature. Here is the Ring of Barahir, the token of our kinship from afar, and here also are the Shards of Narsil. With these you may yet do great deeds, for I foretell that the span of your life shall be greater than the measure of men, unless evil befalls you, or you fail at the test. But the test will be hard and long. The Scepter of Annúminas I withhold, for you have yet to earn it. And one day after revealing Aragorn's true nature to him, yet another blow strikes Elrond's house. As Aragorn, delighted in his newfound lineage, he stumbled upon Arwen and Damiel for the first time, and he was stricken to the core, knowing that he loved Arwen with all his heart, yet he also understood the weight of his love. As time went on, on, Elrond perceived Aragorn's distress and approached him. "There will be no choice for Arwen, my beloved, unless you, Aragorn, Arathorn's son, come between us and bring one of us, you or me, to a bitter parting beyond the end of the world. You do not know yet what you desire of me." However, in the year 2980, Arwen plighted her troth to Aragorn, and when Elrond learned of this, he told Aragorn, "My son, years come when hope will fade, and beyond them little is clear to me. And now a shadow lies between us. Maybe it has been appointed so, that by my loss the kingship of men may be restored. Therefore, though I love you, I say to you, Arwen Undamiel shall not diminish her life's grace for less cause. She shall not be the bride of any man less than the king of both Gondor and Arnor. To me, then, even our victory can bring only sorrow and parting, but to you, hope of joy for a while." Elrond knows that his daughter has made the choice of Luthien, and even if the One Ring is destroyed and Sauron's forces defeated, it will bring yet more loss upon him. He understands that with the destruction of the One Ring, his ring, and all that it has wrought, will fade. He also understands that his daughter's choice will lead to their parting and ultimately to her death in the end. He loves Aragorn as a son and understands that his sacrifice will lead to the rekindling of the race of men, but he also foresees the anguish this choice will cause both Arwen and himself. In the end, Elrond continued to aid the free peoples of Middle-earth regardless of his fate in the matter. Elrond's acceptance of Arwen's choice and his knowledge that it will lead to her mortal death showcased his selflessness and his commitment to the greater good. As the events of The Lord of the Rings unfolded, Aragorn defeated Sauron, and he fulfilled all of Elrond's stipulations. And in the year 3019 of the Third Age, Aragorn married Arwen Undamiel, sealing her fate. And after the wedding, Arwen said farewell to her brothers, but Tolkien says that none saw her last meeting with Elrond. He states, "For they went up into the hills, and there spoke long together, and bitter was their parting that should endure beyond the ends of the world." Elrond, one of the most monumental characters, whose life spanned 3 ages of Middle-earth, then joined Gandalf, Galadriel, Celeborn, Círdan, and the hobbits Bilbo and Frodo, and he set sail into the west as his time in Middle-earth was complete. However, when we reflect on his life in Middle-earth, it is important to remember that he lost both his parents, 2 foster fathers, his wife, and his daughter. Yet he never faltered from challenging the evil of Sauron and fighting for the free peoples of Middle-earth. One can only hope that upon his arrival to the western shores, he found his wife, Celebrian, and that she was healed in mind and waiting for their reunion. As this video comes to a close, I ask that if you enjoyed these well-earned comforts, to please light a beacon by sharing with your friends and family. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment down below. I'd love to know what you thought of the video. Also, make sure to check out our podcast just by searching Well-Earned Comforts wherever you listen. I thank you for staying with me until the end, and I bid you all a very fond farewell.